time, we were just kind of wandering the desert, like I said, the fallow years. And then this day in 2015, which sounds a million years ago, they announced there will be a new series. And to show how mainstream this is, I did a frame capture of the front page of the Huffington Post, like online. And I don't know why that thing didn't go away. There we go. Down here, this is cooler when it's projected, but this is like the front page of the Huffington Post. New Star Trek returning to TV with a Kirk, Spock, McCoy 1969 picture. That's all there was, because they didn't have any guts to it. It was obviously a business thing. They're going to launch an all-access. CBS is not going to do middlemen like Hulu and Netflix and Amazon Prime. They're going to be their own baby, cut out the middleman. And of course, they're going to do original programming, 4 or 5 shows, spin-off of The Good Wife, Christine Baranski, and some new Survivor spin-off, I think. But the crown jewel of this new thing, to get people to subscribe, is going to be Star Trek. And if you're CBS, duh, of course that's what you're going to do, right? So, but they didn't, like, what it's going to actually be about, who knows? Who's running it? They didn't know. So 6 months later, we wind up with, a few months later, we wind up with the title. So Discovery is the name, CBS All Access is the game. And my friend Aaron did a timeline to kind of show if you're confused about things. So here's the Prime timeline, which didn't even have a name until the first Star Trek movie. We had Prime Spock, and then suddenly that was the Prime timeline. And how the Narada, the whole Kelvin timeline, JJ Movies, breaks off and is a separate line. Of course, the Mirror Universe is just bopping along over here. Goatees optional.
Oh, there's things up there. Okay.
Yeah, and so Discovery is going. So here's Enterprise in the 2150s, original series in the 2260s, Next Generation in the 2360s. So Discovery is supposed to be 10 years before original series in the Prime timeline. Just so we're all on the same page. So yeah, Brian, it was very exciting to hear that Brian Fuller, who was kind of, I thought, the senior available Star Trek veteran, like Ron Moore's connected to things, Ira Bear's connected to things. The guys who would do this, there were maybe a couple more, but Brian had the most stature after Hannibal and Pushing Daisies and all that. That was very exciting, and he's really out-of-the-box thinking kind of guy. I've known him since he was a baby writer on Voyager. Like about the 3rd season in his office at the Hart Building there. It's first series since Gene died that will have a Roddenberry in the credits as executive producer. So Rod, Gene's son, and his business partner since high school, Trevor Roth, are down as EPs, executive producers. Not hands-on. They do notes. They're not like at the studio every day. They comment, but they're involved, which I know is an amazing thing to have a Roddenberry back in the credits. It's just amazing. So Nick Meyer, who directed Wrath of Khan, is back in. I'm losing you? Oh, you're moving.
I'm trying to find a better seat.
You're moving, okay. Sorry, I just decided to do, the weight of the room was going this way. So Brian reached out and got Nick Meyer involved, who normally is a movie guy, but the whole thing about streaming and the premium things like HBO and Showtime and all and these streaming services is they're kind of like breaking the wall between TV and movies. So they're spending a lot of money per episode, like many movies. There's Nick a couple years ago at Harv Bennett's memorial, just to show that he's alive. So Joe Menosky, the guy who brought 47s to Star Trek, is in the mix. He's a very out-of-the-box thinker. And Kirsten Beyer, if you read the Voyager novels, she is a really good writer and was a novel writer, but she also knows the whole Star Trek canon really well, and she's kind of their go-to, is it canon or not, or how do we finesse canon to make this fit kind of person. There's actually a bigger writing staff. This is Michelle Yeoh, who's playing the Shenzhou captain. This is the current writing staff. So Aaron, and after Brian left, between American Gods sucking his time down, and as a lot of you know, Discovery was supposed to debut in January, and then May, and then now they've finally given a new date, as of a couple weeks ago. But Brian stepped down, so Aaron Harberts and Gretchen Berg are now the showrunners of Discovery. Like Joe Menosky and Nick aren't here, but this was the day when she came by to visit. I can show you later and come by the table, but there's a lot of them that are on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, but especially Twitter. And Ted is on Twitter, and it's kind of interesting. I'll show you in a second. Michelle Bow is also on. There are 4 or 5 of them. They have a mascot in their writer's room called Jason Gorn, who's an intrepid Gorn of mystery. This is Kirsten, I was just telling you about being the novelist. She does a Twitter, so she's a real author. But Ted is always on Twitter talking about his favorites or whatever. They can't do spoilers for the show, obviously, but he's really interesting to follow. And they're shooting the show in Toronto. The writers are all in LA, and the post-production visual effects are all in LA. So the writers take turns flying to Toronto, where the stage, the directors, the cast, and all the crews are that are actually doing the live shooting. And he will chronicle who's going back and forth, and when he's on the plane to Toronto, it's kind of makes people get the idea that there's really something going on. So finally, like 2 weeks ago, Entertainment Weekly got this scoop from CBS, and there was like Dribble Out News Day, Discovery Dribble Out the News Week, like the week of the 20th of June. So they finally announced a premiere date, September 24th. They're going to run through early November, so like 7 episodes once a week, even though it's streaming. Just a little hint, comparison here, that the Discovery ship itself had changed looks. Although there's another ship, the Shenzhou, that things really start on, which is kind of giving a thing to the epic feel. It's 15 episodes. The ship was based on Ralph McCoy's original design for a 70s movie that was never done, called Planet of the Titans. Yep.
I also, there was also some other concepts for the idea for the Enterprise originally. The original sketch was trying to figure out the Enterprise, and one of before the pilot and everything else, they had ones that was like the CBN Enterprise, the space station looking one. That was another concept, but they used that as a previous pre-warp Enterprise. I saw a lot of that in a lot of the prototype stuff from Gene Roddenberry's first film, and the artists and everyone, with the ring engines.
Yep.
A NASA person.
Now it's kind of been relegated to being a passenger, a civilian ship named Enterprise, because they used it in the Memorial and motion picture. But anyway, this is all Brian's original thing. So this was the first day of filming on the pilot, episode 101 there.
Great clip.
So Sonequa Martin Green finally was contractually allowed to be named, the worst secret in the world, as the lead, who is not a captain, Lieutenant Commander Michael Burnham. It's like every little bit, like, right, I'm going to shut up here in a second because I don't know what you guys are thinking. But just to kind of do a recap and we'll all get caught up. Like, her name being Michael was controversial. I'm like, really, guys? Really? Like, there's 10% of the internet that just melts down over anything, right? So this is, again, if you're following actors and writers' Twitter accounts and things, you get pictures like this. Like a bunch of them went out to dinner. So here she is. Here's Jason Isaacs, that plays the captain of the Discovery itself, next to Michelle. And can't think of his first name, Obi. He's an American Gods. He got cast in 2 Brian Fuller things at once. He's the head Klingon. There's Doug Jones, that you guys are familiar with from last year. What great timing to have him the very next year. So one of those things that one of the actors or writers will tweet and then they're gone the next day, or they'll Instagram and they're gone the next day because they got yelled at. Jason had done a time-lapse Instagram of getting this huge makeup. They're plastering his face, and people thought, they're making a mold to do an alien prosthetic for him. Well, A, it was gone it was a time-lapse. A, it was gone the next day, and B, I was saying that might not be an alien. They may be just doing a life mask of him to apply. It could be old age, it could be for wounds and things, to apply to fit his face. You don't know. So they finally released this picture in the Entertainment Weekly week. So he's obviously human. Lorca is a human name. And this is the Discovery Bridge from which you can take that. People have been analyzing the costumes and everything. Saying, they kind of look like the redesigned JJ costumes for Beyond a little bit. And I keep thinking they all look like the Galaxy Quest. It's almost like Galaxy Quest has been influencing the costume design. I don't know. This is all a machine. These are, if you blow this up, which I can't do here, there's individual little delta shields there in that pattern that make up the pattern tiny. And they were all hand printed. This fabric that they use for these panels down here, it's almost like, take that, cosplayers.
Try to duplicate that.
Yeah, come up with that. It was made somewhere internationally and had to come in and slowed things down. But anyway, the design is all looking. It's almost like it's Galaxy Quest Revenge or something. On the interesting how it's affecting sci-fi costume uniform design. Anyway, Michael Raff's playing the first gay character in Star Trek. That's another thing that's interesting about the show. Rainn Wilson is playing Harry Mudd for about 9 episodes. I never thought of him as creepy. I saw a whole internet reaction to how creepy Harry Mudd is, and I started thinking, okay, well, if we look at the 60s Harry Mudd, especially the Mudd's women Harry Mudd, where he's wiving the wives to the miners, which is a very 1800s kind of thing. They were trying to say, oh, look, Space Frontier. It's like, here come the brides. But a lot of people are just looking at it like, that's just creepy, and, well, yes, it would be, and they're supposed to be an advanced culture. So they've PC'd up Harry Mudd a little bit, but I've hopefully not gotten rid of the rogue elements. Anyway, Rainn Wilson's playing him for several episodes. So another net streak of photos was, this is supposedly the transporter room on the Shenzhou, which is an older ship, and we're getting this feeling that she's the first officer of the Shenzhou, and suddenly it's about the Discovery and what happens to the Shenzhou, and you see in the trailer they're going into battle at Red Alert, and there's lots of Klingon characters cast, so I think the trailer said something about Klingons popping up on scanners. So maybe something happens to the Shenzhou and the action shifts to the Discovery. Who knows? And she's the central person. But her character is not a captain. There's 2 different captains in the thing, and in the saga. The 15-arc episode is supposed to be an arc, like standalones, but still a continuing story, not total standalones. Hopefully not nothing wrong with it, but they're not going to be as serialized as like the DS9 Dominion or like Lost were and a lot of the serialized shows. There'll still be individual stories in each episode, but overall fit a pattern. So, and here's Doug Jones's Lieutenant Saru down here. So yeah, this is not from Discovery. This is Ron Moore in his mullet days, about the first companion's out, so this is like 93 with his Velvet Elvis on the wall, up in the heart. So I'm just going to say real fast, that's some Discovery to get you started. These are some little things from my archive, just to kind of let you know where I'm coming from. So when we're done here, maybe I should have saved this for last. I'm doing a little 10-minute thing on Facebook Live every Tuesday now called Trekland Tuesdays Live with Dr. Trek at 1 o'clock on Pacific time. So, catch that when we're done. So let me just stop there for a second. So I was trying to set some common ground and get you caught up on maybe the latest headlines, since there was like nothing except people griping for a long time. Still griping. Well, there's the whole all access thing. There's the visual canon stuff. There was a really ugly right-wing alt-right throwback to, oh, you got 2 women of color. This is so PC. I'm gonna gag. It's just stupid. It's like, do you not watch? And you know what I think that was? And this is me, you guys sound off. I think what it was, all of that pushback, if you want to dignify by calling it pushback, all of that noise on the internet was by people who are not Trek fans, because I kept going, have you seen the show? Yeah. I think it was just by the alt-right, and Star Trek suddenly ballooned on the pop culture radar big enough that it crossed over into their radar, kind of like the Doomsday Machine. If it came into my line of defense, my sphere of defense, then I'm suddenly on it. And if it goes, or a Borg drone. If it's not in my sight, then I don't care. And Star Trek exploded into the news cycle big enough, it trended enough that they took notice, and all they saw, was an Asian woman and a black woman, and they're the 2 leads on this new Star Trek, and they just all started, vomiting all over the internet. And people are like, really, guys? So then you had the pushback by mainstream media going, oh, some Star Trek fans are offended that there's 2 women of color as the leads. Like, no, they weren't fans. They were just like loudmouths who crossed into their field of view, and a week from now, none of them will care. And that's kind of what happened.
It had a bit of a...
That was my take on it.
Dampening effect, because other people were disappointed with visual elements, like you were saying with visual canon. And there were people who were expressing concern about that, and how if you're going to place it in this timeline, I'm kind of there, I want to see what they do, but I'm
because it's supposed to be the same time as the Cage, as Pikes.
Yes, exactly.
That we saw.
And it kind of, it dampened that in a way that was actually insulting to the people who actually care about the show. Because now it's, whenever someone complains, it's, oh, you don't know the show, it's the alt-right, it's... So the actual complaints that...
The sincere nerd complaints got drowned out by the ridiculous...
Exactly.
Wackadoodle far-right complaints. And so but into the mainstream stream, it all got conflated together, so any negative voice now is...
Dismissed.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
That could be. So now it's kind of like, we can't talk. It's kind of like when W was running for re-election, and they had the story about his whole screwy National Guard service, how he was AWOL for months, and somebody got forged documents to CBS, and after that, and Dan Rather had to resign. So after that, which was a thing, but the whole point of Bush's National Guard service suddenly was lumped in with the bad documents. Like, you can't talk about this now because of this.
Yeah.
It sabotaged that whole news cycle. And what they're worried about now with some of the fake news stuff being, like the other day they had fake documents. Anyway, I didn't mean to get political, but yeah, it's like a well-timed thing across the bow totally blows up the discussion for everybody because of that. But I don't think it's put a total damper on discussion of
Well, there's still a lot of complaints.
Well, the
It's
visual
just-
in the fan cycle, in the fan circle, the visual canons. Like the people are going, that's a transporter, that's a transporter, that's a transporter. First thing I thought of that was the big dishes on the back of the time machine in the George Patton 50s movie. But this is supposed to be the Shenzhou, so it's okay if it's not like final. I don't know. Is all this talk about Discovery, some of this new to anybody? Anybody got it? People are pissed about the All Access thing also.
Yeah,
I'm
not happy about that. For one, I'd really wait to, render my final feelings on it until, I've been able to see it a bit. But
well, that's awful reasonable of you.
Well, damn.
Wait till it airs to have an opinion?
Maybe, but there are aspects to it that I, at this point, I don't really see that they're needed or relevant changes. Like the transporter change, like, okay, that could be a little gimmicky. Is this really going to be necessary? Because we know we just end up with this type of transporter anyway, that you see from TOS onwards. And then there's the whole, Klingon debacle. It's like, how necessary was this to really, change the Klingon look so completely to where I wouldn't even have known it was a Klingon unless the caption said, oh, by the way, this is a Klingon. It's like, so how necessary are these changes? I mean, are they really going to be substantive to the
well, we don't.
the
Is there a
franchise,
reason
or
for that?
are we just going to go, why the hell did you even do that?
Now, see, then here we go. So we're back to in '79, the first time the bumpy hit. We had cheap aliens in the '60s on TV budget, right? Black shoe polish, swarthy, Ming of Mongo Klingons, right?
Long mustaches.
Yeah, yes, Fu Manchu stuff. And then the first time you saw the ridged head ones, they were like, well, now we've got the budget to do them the way we always wanted to do. And so that was more or less the Klingon look. And then you had the inner thing of, I want a canon explanation for all we had to do to Klingon. Then you had the, oh, good God, guys, they had more budget, just let it go thing, right? And then they had to, and then it was just kind of out there, and then in Tribulations, for a joke, they have to confront it, or they didn't have to, but they tried to confront it with Worf seeing the matched footage 60s Klingons, and everybody, the DS9 bunch saying, oh, those are Klingons, and Worf's just like, we don't talk about it. So it was a joke, and Ron even said, well, we thought about it, and we just thought we would acknowledge it with a laugh and go on. But what that did was we're not, so now it is canon. It's like, it's not just to ignore the production, which
Then Enterprise
real thing.
picked it up and ran with it.
I was going to say, so then
I enjoyed
no
how
one ever
Enterprise
could come
did
up
it,
with a
though.
thing that would and you had the three Blood Oath Klingons, the Kang, Koloth, and Koroth, being Kang, Koloth, and Kor, being in DS9. So it's something happened, but that one line as a joke made it a canon thing, and then all the nerd boys had to accumulate enough into staff positions to be able to come up with the convoluted augment virus thing. But they did finally do it.
I thought that was well done.
My thing is, I said this for years after Game of Thrones got big. I'm like, a lot of people we'd had these little debates at cons and online, and people would say, what should the next show be, next show be? And for years people had said, how about just an all Klingon show? And just do the inner, you know, they're not cardboard, they were so well developed that, you know, they say honor, but there's all kinds of machinations and politics going on. And then when Game of Thrones got big, I'm like, well, how about Game of Houses? Because you could show all the, you know, instead of having just 6 extras sitting on the council in the background, you could actually have that all represent something. And like you had we saw the Duras house and the Gaurons and the Martoks, and that's kind of like and Gowron and Martok were outsiders. Duras was the old corrupt family. Anyway, we're getting too nerdy for you. I hope not. So yeah, and then when they started casting all these Klingons and people, and then, you know, the JJ Klingons were different. I'm like, well, it's an alternate universe, so something in 30 years, you know, did that. But then when you think about it, if you really want to, what's like behind the reason why there are houses? Maybe there is some species, like,
Different.
we've never, species diversity, right?
Klingons.
Right.
I was thinking the same thing.
We get there's multiracial humans. They've introduced, you know, black and more Asian-looking Romulans and Vulcans from that strain.
Yeah.
It would actually add texture to Klingons to have a diversity of kind of outward-looking faces. So right now, I'm already doing my retcon thing like I do in the magazine, like smoothing it over like we've done over the years on everything. It's just another, I'm hoping this is just, because there are so many fervent, Ted is that way, Kirsten is there. I'm thinking there's so many really fervent fan cred people on the staff that there's all the things we don't know yet, that I'm thinking there's some like master hand in all this that's, you know,
Smoothing things out.
and they're even saying, guys, but, you know, and I keep hearing from people, it's going to be okay. It really is. They really are paying attention. This is not, you know, just glad handing this. So we'll see. But right off the bat, my first initial thing is this is actually going to be cool to see different, because even the Klingons I've seen look a little different, like in clumps. So we'll see. And somebody even the other day said, let's have some pasty-faced black leather, what am I trying to say? Let's have some 60s looking crappy Klingons in the mix, like over at the corner being ignored or something. That would be awesome.
That'd be hilarious.
That would be hilarious, yeah. Kind of like when Battlestar Galactica had the old Cylon in the museum or something, you know, as a nod. We'll see.
Well,
But yeah, wait till it airs.
well, I've seen already some of
Trust me,
the CBS previews for Discovery, and they've already shown shots of the Klingons, and they have these really large bulge forehead ridges already. Yet they already did the NX-01 timeline with them doing the retrovirus and everything, and smoothing out their foreheads. Now we got the oversized ridges for something that looks like armor.
But now, the Enterprise didn't say that everybody went smooth. They're just saying that's in the thing. That's in the
It
mix.
just happened.
There's an explanation for these ones that you saw in TOS. It's not all of them.
Right, and obviously, in the motion picture Klingons are 2.5 years after the last Klingons you saw on the series, canon timeline-wise. So, you know, and that's a whole crew of ridged heads, so bumpy heads. So,
Yeah. My first thought was
We're
that
diving in.
the whole retrovirus thing to go through finally went through its paces because, you know, Kane, Koloff, and all the 3 big leaders, you know, the generals, you know, they finally flowed through, you know, cleared out, and they started developing their ridges back and everything.
yeah, the Blood 03. Blood 03, yeah. So, I mean, so all of that hoo-ha was, what's funny is, and this is another thing I try to do with, like with Coral 47 and anything I write and talk about, is just having been around Trek so long. People, newer fans, I try to say younger fans, newer fans forget, like, oh my God, when Wrath of Khan came out, and Savick cried at Spock's funeral, and people were like, why is she crying? When they initially did the script, she was, and the novelization, a lot of times you get the novelizations of especially movies, and like pilots, they'll do that. They're having to, on the deadlines, the writers are having to work from an early draft script. So there'll be scenes that were cut, and little things that were changed later, or maybe de-emphasized. And Savick was originally supposed to be half Romulan, half Vulcan, right? Yeah. Anyway,
The idea for T'Pol,
so,
too. Wasn't that the idea for T'Pol, too?
Well, T'Pol was originally supposed to be T'Pau. until they realized they were going to have to pay the Ted Sturgeon estate every time she was used, so they made it not to PAL. They used it as a guest character, later. But my point is, when that happened, we didn't have the internet and social media, but there was a meltdown about, well, you Savick crying, oh, you screwed up, as well as, how did Chekhov know Khan because he wasn't in the show first season? And that whole little jokey thing about Chekhov was below decks or something. Walter's story about he was in the bathroom and Khan was waiting on the bathroom. Came out, he's like, I'll never forget your face. Make me wait. But I mean, there have been, all throughout Trek history, there's two things. One, things that we see on screen that piss people off for a while until it just kind of eventually settles into the flow, into the tapestry of Star Trek. And the other thing is, every time there is a new iteration of Trek, there's the 10% mad, noisy, angry sounding off. I'm never going to... Before Wrath of Khan, when it leaked out that Spock was going to die, there was a thing of all the Spock fans that started fandom, really, the organized part of fandom, there were 3 or 4 women who got together and did a marketing campaign and did a survey, like a by-the-book market survey, and said, if they kill Spock off in Wrath of Khan, will you go to see the movie? Will you buy the merchandise? Will you do all this stuff? And they came up with all this stuff about how Paramount, if you kill off Spock, you will lose, 23% of your box office, and don't you do this, change it. Well, they did test audiences, and that's when they added the whole coffin. It just ended so depressingly that they didn't count on, that people were like sobbing, not because of that marketing campaign, because he still died, but they changed the ending of the movie to give you hope that the whole thing about being reborn in the Genesis wave was a late thing they did, which that's no secret now. But there was this whole movement. They took out full-page ads in the trade magazines, the New York Times, and said, Paramount, if you kill off Spock, you will lose this much revenue, which was a whole new thing. It's like, oh my God, agitated consumers. And, Next Generation had the whole, it's not Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, how can you call it Star Trek, damn you, I don't care if Gene is doing, he's getting old and senile. I mean, there was a whole, and there were a lot of fans that went underground and did not watch. And then, of course, Next Generation had way more viewers than 20 years of original series fans ever had, just because it was a new crowd and it looked new at the time. Things changed. So anyway, DS9 was the show that didn't go anywhere. And Voyager was on UPN where you couldn't watch it, or it was stuck in the Delta Quadrant, no Klingons. And Enterprise was a prequel, and oh my God, Star Trek's supposed to be about going forward, and you're going backward. I mean, every show has had, people screaming about it, so we'll see. There's just that built-in, and then 20 years later, you tell people, like right now, what was going on for this, and people just smile and go, really? There was a faction in the rerun era that could not stand, they thought that Spock had been bastardized in the 3rd season when it was Fred Freiberger, not Gene, running the show. And when Spock is telling Droxine in Cloud Mine it was all about Vulcan sex, this whole faction of fandom was like, Spock would never talk about Vulcan sex. The people that kept Pon farr a secret for 100 years, until Amok Time, would not sit there and just tell her all this stuff. And so it was like, we don't accept there was a faction of fandom that said, we don't accept the 3rd season. I mean, that's kind of forgotten now. But
The monster.
as Emily Litella would say, it's always something.
It's known as the Monster of the Week season.
Was
Season 3, the Monster of the
Oh
Week
yeah,
season.
yeah. But I mean, yeah, kind of. But there was the hoarding. But that was the thing that
Because
really.
Gene was not as involved in the writing.
Right.
and
Well,
suffered so
all
much.
the way up and down. Yeah. Okay. So I've been rattling along. What do you guys think? Is anybody not going to watch Discovery because they're not going to take all access? I'm assuming if you come into the room, you're kind of a Trek fan, or you're just really, really, really bored with the rest of the convention, and there's nothing else going.
I hope you don't say that.
It's noon on Sunday. I know. No, you wouldn't say that. But is anybody not going to take all access because they refuse to pay for Star Trek?
I'm not going to buy all access because I don't think it's worth it in its own. I'm sure I'll watch it at a friend's house or something.
Sure. We'll watch it at a friend's house.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
My good friend Rip Torrent. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Funny guy.
Come on, guys. This was meant for me not to talk all hour.
I haven't even seen any of the trailers, to be honest, or any previews. No.
How did you wind up in this room?
I don't have internet, so I saw
okay.
pictures, and they're alright, I guess. I don't really trust pictures. Like, I've seen so many movies and seen pictures of characters in movies, and people are like, "Oh, that's terrible," blah 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 blah. But when you see the movie, they have the color correction, they have all the effects, whatever else they need to do, the environment.
It was a half second.
It looks good. Yeah, it looks
Yeah.
alright. I mean, I don't know about the Klingon. I'm waiting to actually see the show.
I have
It looks a little weird.
one thing
but like you said with the whole, it could be a different sector of
Well, this
Klingons.
they say this is the Shinzu transporter room, but maybe it's what gets me is this back wall here, like these panels. They're not like even symmetrical.
No.
It's almost like it's the high school pep club decorating for a part. It's just like it's there. It's just interesting how it's supposed to be Starfleet, and it looks like just kids went in and cut out squares that weren't even and stuck them on a. I don't know. And we can't. I want this to be bigger. We can't tell. So this could be a projection. This could be something that came up with them when they were beamed, and I don't know.
They might have had to thrown it together themselves. In space.
Yeah.
Who knows? That's crazy.
Yeah. So, anyway, I'll leave it I'll leave
The show to explain it.
Yeah, leave the show. No, I was going to say, I will leave this sitting on Jason Isaacs.
Speaking of the transport, they're way different compared to also the NX class single pad transporter, which is pretty basic to the generation one.
You see the lineage, yeah.
Yeah, and this one's completely is in the middle, and it skews off the design from the basic, simplicity.
Maybe the Shenzhou was like an early contribution by the Andorians, and this shows like extreme Andorian influences in transporter design before it was standardized. I don't know. Those things that kind of shit's floating around out there to be used, so we'll see.
Retcon.
Well, for me, this kind of seems confusing a little bit, like trying to wrap my head around it.
It might already be written into it, you never know. Have you seen some of the Trek Yards videos where they extrapolate ideas of what the reason for some stuff is? Those are a lot of fun. And they go back and pull things. Like, they talk about the whole lineage of Klingons and the reactions to every single one.
Kind of like what I was just saying.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I cautiously thinking that this would be explaining, because the Klingons have a whole empire. Is there just one? I mean, you think about diversity in humans, race is a made-up thing that we've come up with, because we're Homo sapien. They don't need another species named biologically for us. So, why not the Klingons too? So we'll see. We'll see.
Why not ancient Klingons in a sarcophagus ship?
That too. So, I mean, come on, anybody really upset by anything? Or not upset? Well, we've been talking here. Anybody else got concerns or
Specifically
mad about
concern-wise, the
Or, what we've been talking about Discovery, there was supposed to be a fourth. Does anybody care about the JJ movies, about whether there's even another one or not?
no, hoping
Did
not.
anybody come in? Oh God, no! They had the brave talk about Chris Helmsworth coming back as George Kirk again, even though he died in some way, or seen again, I guess. But Paramount's in such bad financial shape, and the Chinese almost bought them out, but then the Chinese backed off buying Paramount.
Where would that put the Star
The
Trek
movies have not come up
license?
with, and who would do it, and all this stuff, huh?
Where would that put the license? If Paramount's bought... and
China would
it's-
just profit off it.
It would be the same. The original Viacom divorce had Star Trek's licensing with CBS, even for the movies.
Yeah. Those are temporary. You just
And
buy them
and
and
the friction
you
between
don't make
Bad
movies,
Robot and
lose it.
that machinery, Paramount into CBS, was, that's why. I remember hearing about it while it was happening at the time, and everybody was like, this makes no sense, this makes no sense. And then finally the big picture was that he was just trying to create a Lucasfilm again, his own empire, like George Lucas had Lucasfilm. And CBS, it was not set up. If Gene had been able to buy out Trek in 1970 for whatever, like the $500,000 they were selling it for, about 5 seconds, they offered to sell all of this dead little failed show to him. He couldn't raise the money for it, and then within a year, they were like, "Wait, BBC!" You know, when 30 syndicated stations started showing it, and their ratings went through the roof at 4 and 5 and 6 in the afternoon, and Paramount's like, maybe we should hang on to this. Maybe there's something there. And he had that tiny window to buy it. Otherwise, it would have been the same thing as George Lucas and Star Wars, even though he had done it through MGM, right? No, Fox, 20th Century Fox. Shame on me. But anyway, that's why JJ went to Star Wars, because he couldn't do his own thing, and I don't think they got it. And CBS was like, "Are you kidding? We've got 50 years of stuff here. We're not going to blow that out the airlock." You know, they actually thought they were going to come in and blow people away with the first '09 movie because it was so new and modern. And it's like, no, there's 737 hours of Prime Trek. You don't just that's what built the thing. People aren't just going to drop that and go, "Oh my God, this new movie is so incredible." Like, I'm going to forget my 50 years of invested emotion. Huh?
There were fan films based on TOS doing well at that point.
Yeah.
Like Phase 2.
Yeah. They had for 8 years. Yeah. Phase 2 and Farragut and Exeter and Hidden Frontier.